Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Best of Book Marketing podcast. I am Paulette Stout, and we are here with Lainey Cameron, and we have two amazing guests that will join us in a moment right after our updates. And I've got to turn off and silence my cell phone. We are here to talk about debuts, and we put all of our effort into debuts. But what do we learn from those experiences? So we're super excited to get into that. What did we learn so we can pay it forward for ourselves and for others? So it'll be a great conversation with our two guests, and we will do our personal updates first. I think, yeah.
Go for it.
Lainey,
What's
you
going
want
on
to
with
go?
you? What's happening with you? You tell us first.
So I'm really deep into writing my sixth novel, and I'm super excited. It's in a new genre for me. It's a sapphic romance, and I am feeling the flow. So I'm very excited about that. I really love these characters. I have zero outline. I am totally just going with it this time, and I've had to redo it a few times, but I feel like I've got it kind of the first third in a good spot, and I'll be able to move forward. Super excited for that. Also, as I've repositioned my books into romance, I'm really just trying to dive into that space. So I've got a bunch of shows coming up. I have Book Lovers Con in Las Vegas, which is a 4-day show at the Flamingo Hotel. If you're going to be there at the end of March, I'll be there unless my painy leg won't let me fly, but I'm hoping to be there. Also have BookCon in New York City at the Javits Center. I was super excited to get into that. There's going to be some really big name people there, and it sold out in a minute. So I'm excited to be there in the Indy Alley area, and I'll be also at the Liberty State Fiction Writers Conference in New Jersey, and in that's April. I'll be teaching a session there and selling books, and I see some thumbs up over there from Christina. You're going to be there too?
I went last year. I love those writers. It's an awesome conference.
Yeah, so I'll be speaking there and doing a session on writing the census, and it's a great session. I could barely fit everything in an hour, and I'm excited that I'll also be doing that in July for WFWA, Women's Fiction Writers Association. So if you are not attending that conference and you do want to hear that subject, I encourage you to sign up for the webinar when it loads up, and more to come on that. So what's up with you, Lainey?
Well, I just got back from volunteering for a full week and a bit for the San Miguel Writers Conference here in San Miguel de Allende, which was fabulous. Had so much fun. I love the focus on making everybody at the conference feel welcome, no matter where you're from, no matter what language you speak. There was a lot of focus on increasing the Spanish language programming, which was really great. We had the Minister of Culture for Guanajuato came and spoke about how to support literary endeavors in Mexico, in addition to all of the international presence. Historically, this conference has just over 1,000 people come in from around the world for it. It's a lot of fun. And so I just want to point out, if that might appeal to you, I will tell you that I'm feeling very safe and comfortable in Mexico this week. I am not worried at all. We had a couple of interesting days there last week, but everything is calm. And if you might be interested coming next year, they're doing the same price as last year on the conference until I knew I wouldn't remember this, so I wrote it down for myself and then I can't remember what I said, until March 30th. March 30th, you can get this year's prices, and then they go up after March 30th. And if you might want to do a session and come down and kind of get to go to the conference as a speaker, they're taking proposals until March 15th. So I thoroughly recommend it. It's a really, really, really good event, a real blast. I have a lot of fun with it. Otherwise, I did a really interesting session. It was very fun for Sisters in Crime. I did an online workshop for them, all around how to succeed without a publicist and how to tell if you even need one. So if anyone wants me to give that presentation to their organization, let me know. It was a lot of fun. It went really well. We got phenomenal feedback on it. And coming up on Monday, just a few days from now, I start my next group in my 12 Weeks to Book Launch Success program, which is where I help authors with creating a launch plan for their book. And small secret, both of our guests actually went through the program with me. So they are welcome to tell me it sucked live here in front of everybody if they didn't enjoy it. But I know that they both have such interesting careers and such interesting community. And part of why we selected them, and I felt very strongly about bringing Christine and Gabi on, is I knew they'd have so much to say on this topic, and they're always helping other authors. And so I love bringing on people who represent the best of the writing community. And I think that's it, other than I'll be in Alexandria in April for the WFWA retreat in Alexandria the last week of April. So lots of fun stuff happening right now.
Yep. Love it. Love it. I did see your post-its of your edits today, and it looked a little bit mind-blowing, but very impressive.
It's me trying to map my character's journey because my beta reader said it felt a little repetitive. She was beating herself up, kind of dwelling in her lies and shame for too many chapters. So now I'm like, okay, how can we do it a little piece at a time so it doesn't feel
I
repetitive?
liked her dwelling in lies and shame, and I was a beta reader too, so just saying.
Okay. Well, I know it's like at some point it's like it's good enough. Let it go, Lainey.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move into our episode because this one's going to be a really fun one. I think it's just going to be a really open, forthright conversation. And we pour everything into those debut novels, right? And the thing is, sometimes what works is not what we expected would work. And sometimes we do things that we look back in time and we're like, why did I waste my time and energy on that thing? And so we thought it might be fun to talk about that, talk about what that looks like, what worked, what didn't work. We also want to talk about what would you cut without hesitation? Now that you're doing this the second, the third time, like what would you just throw overboard and say, why did I spend my energy on that? I had a whole list of those after my debut 5 years ago. And so let me just tell you a little bit about our guests because they both are fascinating people. Christine is a former television anchor and reporter, and she's a former Capitol Hill press secretary. If you can imagine how difficult that is on the level of balancing all your constituents and doing that job. Her debut novel called Friends with Secrets came out in 2024 and it became an Amazon bestseller. It was the winner of the WFWA Star Award for Best Debut Novel. It's a phenomenal book. It's all about friendship and secrets, and it's a really fun read. It's got just that right amount of suspense, but it's also core women's fiction, emotional journey. Loved it. Gabi is an award-winning British-born author. She and I have that in common. We're both Brits. She lives in Connecticut in a cottage that's American outside and English inside. I love that. And she released her third book last year, and her award-winning memoir, Love's Journey Home, came out in 2022. That was kind of her debut book, and then she did a debut novel after that, so it'll be interesting to hear the differences. And she's got a new one that came out last year, and the novels are a series, which will be an interesting conversation because it's slightly different, Paulette, when you've got a series versus when you're doing individual novels. So I think that's everything I wanted to tell you about them, but they are both just going to have so much interesting stuff to share. Let's get going.
Cool. So let's just dive in, and I'll just start with you, Christine. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your books and, where you are in your writing journey.
Well, I was born and raised on a fourth-generation family farm in rural North Dakota, so I'm always the only person in the room who grew up in North Dakota. My debut novel came out in 2024. It's called Friends with Secrets. It's published with Lake Union. I have a second novel coming out June 9th, also with Lake Union, called Behind White Picket Fences. And I am actively working on a third novel, which is due June 1st, the day after my son graduates from high school, which does not yet have a title. So I'm a debut. Second novel's coming out soon, and I'm trying to promote the second one while writing the third one, which has been an interesting balancing act.
And it looks like you've made the pivot from memoir to series. So tell us a little bit about you and your writing journey, Gabi.
Yeah, so it wasn't exactly a pivot because I started writing my memoir thinking nobody was ever going to read it. But as people read parts of it, they're like, you really ought to publish this. So I did, and I kind of made my way through. I read everything I could find, and I asked people about what you had to do to launch your book. And it was complete overload. But some of the things when you're doing memoir are similar to what you have to do when you're doing a novel, as I discovered. I was completely over the top for my novel. I was exhausted. I didn't have time to write. I was practically in tears half the time. Had I remembered to do this? Had I remembered to do that? And then I found out a few things.
So here's a fun one. If you think back about your debut launch, and I'll let you choose, Gabi, whether you consider it your memoir or your first novel. What is one word that comes to mind that would describe your debut? And I'll let you go first, Gabi, seeing as you're with us here.
So mine would be over the top. Too much.
Too much.
Yeah.
I like that. Christine, what about you?
I think mine would be grateful. It took me 10 years to get a traditional publishing deal and an agent. And I was just so excited to finally be a published author that I was just so grateful that it was happening, that I didn't have a lot of expectations. And looking back, I'm really grateful about that, because someone once said expectations are resentments waiting to happen. And so I was grateful to be there. I was grateful to finally be in the room with the big kids sitting at the published author table. So grateful is probably the best word I have to describe my debut.
And Paulette, you're yeah.
Controlled chaos. I thought I had it all under control. I had this big fancy PR agency and we were doing all the things. And then it got out to readers, and then like all hell broke loose because people started fighting in the comments on Goodreads, and it was just like I had to, my cover was, I just worried that the cover was misrepresenting the story, so I had to quickly pivot on the cover. And then it just became this whole trying to catch up to the marketplace and learning what I didn't know. So it was definitely controlled chaos. How about you, Lainey?
Yeah, I'm also on the grateful one with Christine. I felt like I had so much support from other people. And I guess I have to point out that my debut was 2020, so it was COVID year, right? And so I was with a group of authors. I was part of the 2020 debuts group that was meeting in a private Facebook group. And we were all kind of heads exploding, going like, oh my God, A, the world is just, wow, what's happening? And B, like all the publishers were like throwing their hands in the air. The traditional publishers, especially the really big ones, were like throwing their hands in the air and going, well, we sell to bookstores and the bookstores are closed. So I don't know. What now? Like literally the publishers were looking at the authors going, and what now? And so unpredictable, unexpected, irrational. I went into it thinking I had my plan fairly organized, and I ended up feeling really grateful, both for support that I got from other authors, and also that I was with a small publisher that wasn't bookstore dependent, because it felt like the authors who were going through bookstores were just put through the ringer in 2020 and honestly again in 21. So it was kind of unpredictable. I don't know. Unpredictable might be a good word. And let's just ask, like, is there anything, Gabi and Christine, anything you want to tell us about your debuts, like the quick story of your debut, like who did it come out with? Was it really your first book? Like, maybe Christine, tell us a little bit about, like, what's the story of that debut novel?
Well, it definitely wasn't my first book. I have 6 unpublished novels in a drawer that were rejected by agents or rejected by publishers or rejected by both. So it was actually my 7th novel, but my first women's fiction novel. And I had a different experience because I'm with Lake Union, and it was selected by the Amazon editors for first reads. And so I just got really lucky, and it sort of got this shot of rocket fuel that, led to it doing really well. And I would love to take credit for it and say it was all me and my brilliant marketing, but it wasn't. I was in the right place at the right time. And so that was kind of a part of my publishing journey that I wasn't expecting, but was a wonderful, unexpected benefit when it actually happened.
And it led to you having, like, I want to say, like, 25,000 reviews or more at this point. It's a huge number, right? Yeah. And that's word of mouth, right? When you get that many reviews, that many people reading, it's amazing for word of mouth.
Yeah, that was really helpful.
Gabi, what about you?
Well, so I wrote the memoir first, but my novel was something that I really wanted to do. And I started writing it during the pandemic because, we all wanted to be somewhere else, right? So I invented this world and these characters and everything. And I thought, okay, I'm ready to go. It's a small town in Connecticut that I've invented. Well, it turned out, never mind. It turned out that I'd invented a town that actually sort of exists. And it wasn't until I went to that town And they went, "Oh my God, you've put us in your book." That I realized that the American pronunciation of the town I invented made it sound like them. Anyway, so these are the little things. You think you know your market. I know my market now is that little town. They'll buy every copy, you know. But before and my books are what I refer to as feel-good fiction. I'm fed up with the other labels, and they're tricky because I have a friendly ghost in there. I have a woman on a journey, and the ghost seemed to be so popular that when I was writing the second book and feeling a bit bored with it myself, I was getting feedback from people saying, we love this ghost. I thought, this is what this one needs. So now this book, the second book, has got ghosts in it also. So it's escapist in a way, escapist fiction. It's not exactly fantasy. It's not romantasy. It's hard to pigeonhole, and that's a difficult thing when you've got a novel. So I had to figure out what my market, who were my readers going to be. That was my first job. And I think I did pretty well with that. I reached those readers. So I was happy about that. And I just say one thing very quickly. I had been collecting all kinds of marketing ideas, right, all over the place for at least 5 years before I even had a book to publish. And I had 120 pages of it, with all the links for everything from, keychains and bookmarks, all the way up to services that would do X, Y, and Z for you. Have I referred to it? No.
Yeah, we talk about that in, I can't remember what episode, talked about that acquisition of learning, where you're just kind of collecting things and then getting that overwhelmed feeling. But let's go back to the marketing piece, Christine. So when you were thinking about marketing your book, you probably had a sense of what it was going to be like. So how did reality compare to your expectations? And I know you said the expectations were regrets, but I'm sure you had some.
I did, and being with Lake Union is a little bit different. It's something like 70% of all the books in this country are sold on Amazon, and Lake Union does not focus on bookstore distribution. It focuses on selling your book on Amazon, and so that's a different sort of marketing program. I guess my goal primarily was to make sure that everyone I had ever known or worked with knew that I had a book out. And if they were going to buy it, that was up to them. But I wanted everyone to know. And one of the things that I really enjoyed doing was sort of, my books are about motherhood. My books are about moms. I have 3 kids. My kids are in school. And so one of the things that I did was I talked to a lot of moms. I talked to a lot of book clubs. And for me, I felt like that was a really good use of my time, because it's women's book club fiction. It's about motherhoods. Every mom I know is in a book club. So I spent a lot of time going to book club meetings, talking about my book at book club meetings. And that's something I'm going to continue to do with the next one, because I just enjoy them. I think they're fun. But also I feel like some of the books that I've loved most, I did not find out about them from Instagram or from a publisher or from TikTok. I found out about them through word of mouth, like Lessons in Chemistry. I was at an Easter brunch, and this woman sitting next to me said, "Have you read this book called Lessons in Chemistry?" And I'm like, "No, what's it about?" She's like, "I can't even explain it. Just read it. It's so good." So I read it and I loved it. And then I went on to tell other people, "I can't explain it. Just read it. It's so good." And so I feel like if you can get your book out there in the world, and people like it, they will tell their mother-in-law and their sister-in-law and their old college roommate. And I feel like that's sort of how marketing works, right? We read a good book, we want everyone else to read it too. And so that's what I guess I've tried to do, is just sort of meet readers where they are. And I think that's book club meetings. And that's sort of how I've tried to spread the word about my book.
What about for you, Paulette? How was it different if you think back to your debut? Is it different than what you thought it would be?
Well, it's so funny because I had a super realistic expectation that the world was sitting there with bated breath waiting for my book. Like I just knew that when my book hit the world, like the rotation of the earth would stop and everyone would prostrate themselves in my direction and they would say, "Oh my God, where have you been for eternity?"
And did that
I
happen?
believe that. No.
Not exactly.
Not exactly. No, that's interesting. The PR firm I had took like a very like a not like I didn't realize it at the time that firm was really specialized in nonfiction. So they took kind of like a nonfiction approach to my book because my book, the original draft of it, it's in the second edition now. It was kind of like a women's fiction taking on the issue of pleasure and women having trouble finishing in the bedroom. So they were going after a lot of intimacy spaces, podcasts, articles, things around that. So I did get some play there. But I became a little bit concerned that I was going to get pegged as like the orgasm lady. And then like, what about my other books? I'm not going to be doing that for every book. So I just kind of, I don't know if you experience this, Gabi, with like having a memoir as your first book and then doing a novel. It's like, you don't want to get shoehorned into a specific persona, so that was a little of a concern. And it was true because when I had the second book, it was like a completely different type of an audience experience. So
It's true.
how about you, Ferlani?
I think I thought it would just be like so organized, maybe coming from a marketing background. I just thought you would have this incredibly organized launch plan and everything would be like laid out. And I thought it would all be based on data. And I think, this is what led to me deciding to teach marketing to authors, is the realization that a lot of the things we tell authors to do aren't based on actual data, right? That just like, you need to do this or you need to do that. And so I guess I went into it having this expectation of having a lot more data than there actually is around almost everything. So yeah, that was kind of an eye-opening thing for me. Like in a world where you're not drowning in all the data at the beginning, how do you make choices? And you end up like, for me, you end up having to go back to your target reader and say, okay, who is going to love or adore this book and where am I going to find them, and use that to guide you. But it was kind of surprising to me because I thought there would be a lot more data. I don't know. I thought someone would hand me a data packet that says, here's the entire market of this women's fiction thing you're going after. And here's how you do it. Like, no, we're all like making it up as we go. And I think that was eye-opening for me. And I think when we have books that cross genres as well, I think it gets especially interesting. Like Gabi's books, that what make your novels special is the ghost element, right? They're like the women's fiction, but they're mystery, but they're ghosts. And like they're special because of that, right? If they didn't have those elements, they wouldn't be these amazing books, right? Like it's really fun. Her first book with the husband of the ghost is really fun. It's very witty and amusing, and the banter. But like, it doesn't quite, like, you've got the witty banter of a rom-com, but it's not a rom-com, right? Like, the husband's dead. So
I've got a review for this book in the Strand magazine, which is all about crime. In fact, my photo's next to Patricia Cornwell, right? On the index page. And I'm like, really? They took a review for my book? It's not a crime. It's not really a mystery. Well, it's a tiny bit of a mystery. Point is, you just don't know who's going to pick up your book and give you that word of mouth that you weren't expecting,
So in that world where we don't have infinite data and we cross genres, etc., how have you approached the question? Let's start with you, Gabi, of like where it's worth spending money or your energy, right? Energy or money.
Right. Yeah. So I think I spent money to begin with on someone to help me with my social media, in particular with my Canva work, because I have never had long enough to sit at a computer and learn Canva. And I think I would need several days of just repetitive learning. Every time I go back to it, I've forgotten what I did the time before. So I had someone to help me with that, and that was very worthwhile. And this was the daughter of an author friend of mine. So she wasn't very expensive, but because her mother was an author, she understood about books and so on. So I spent money there. The first time I spent money on a book launch and so on. And you don't actually need to do that. Book launches are nice, but of course, when you're starting, you really want to see whether there are any real people who'll come and read your book. So it's fun to do that, but I would say not essential.
Do you mean, Gabi, by book launch, do you mean like an event, like a party is what you're talking about? Okay, like a physical event, like a party. Got it.
Yeah, have a party, but don't expect that necessarily it'll solidify your book. what I did for my my second book, because I hadn't done it in time for the first one, was to go on to NetGalley using some advice from you, Lainey, about using Victory editing rather than paying the full price, and how to do it to get reviews, because I do think that trying to get reviews is important. And the other thing I spent a small amount of money, not huge, was on expanding my email list, which started off at around 300 and is now around 3,000. It's not huge, but for someone who's a small writer, if you like, it's nice. It's a decent size.
What about for you, Christine? How did you decide where to spend your time, your money?
I think for me, a lot of it was figuring out where to spend my time. And, in the year between when I turned in my first book, my debut, and it came out, I was so focused on doing all of the launch stuff that I wasn't writing. And so then once the book came out, it was like, oh, well, it's, your publisher has the option on your next book and you have a window where you need to turn in a proposal for something else. And I hadn't been writing. And I really wish that I had prioritized continuing to write during that launch process, because, the single most valuable thing I think any of us have are the ideas in our head. And a book is a commodity. A book is something you can sell. And so I really wish I had prioritized writing time. The other thing that I decided to prioritize was, everyone's like, oh, you should be on TikTok and you should be here and you should be on Threads and you should be on Blue Sky. You should be on, and I can't. And so I am on Instagram and I am on Facebook and I am on Substack, and that's it. And I can't write and be on all those places at the same time. And again, I am choosing to prioritize my writing. And then the other thing that I choose to spend my time on is my newsletter. I love writing my newsletter. I don't have a huge newsletter subscription, but every single one of those people are someone I know or someone who has read my book. And I now have relationships. These people have become my friends. They read my book. They emailed me to tell me they enjoyed it. I invited them to subscribe to my newsletter. I send out my newsletter, they hit reply, and we have a conversation. And so I feel like the people who read my books have become my friends. And that is because of my newsletter. I spend a lot of time writing it. I try to make it thoughtful. I try to make it something people will want to read, not just buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. And so those are places where I've chosen to prioritize my time. Like Gabi, I've never figured out Instagram. And so one of the things that I have chosen to spend money on is I have a graphic designer who designs all my author swag. He's the husband of one of my friends. He's incredible, and everything looks beautiful. And that I feel was worth every penny, because A, it would have taken me 1,000 years. B, it would have looked horrible. And C, I believe in the age of AI, we need to pay humans to do things that are creative instead of outsourcing it to the robot. So I'm more than happy to pay an actual real graphic designer to make beautiful author swag to promote my book.
So I think we touched on a few marketing tactics. So I'd love to dig in a little bit more about, you talked about newsletters and some social, what are your ARCs, blog tours, things? What are your go-to tactics that you feel like, yes, these work for me, I want to do them again? And which are ones where you're like, yeah, I'm never doing that again? Go to you first, Gabi.
So I did a book tour for my memoir, and I did another one for my first novel. And I thought they were good, but as I did them over the years, they started getting quite expensive. And I wasn't sure that in order to get whatever it was, 18 reviews, that I wanted to spend quite that much money.
When you say book tours, you mean digital book tours, not in-person
digital
book tours, right?
Book
Yes.
bloggers,
Yes.
Yeah. And even though I'm practically a neighbor of one of the book tour gurus, and I love her, but I just felt it was too much to spend on that. Then I have another friend who says, just give away 10,000 copies of your ebook and you'll get reviews, all right? And she does, because she's introducing her books to, so many people. Somewhere between that is me. And so I offer a book, an ebook for people to read if they would like to. And then if they like it, I say, I'd love it if you'd write a review. If you don't like it, could you just not tell anybody? That seems to have worked. It seems to have worked pretty well.
That's adorable.
Well, I don't want them going, she said I should.
Yeah, I've worried about that too. What about you, Christine? What is your go-to and never agains?
I think my go-tos are, I hired Susie Approved to do a Bookstagram tour. My publisher sends me 2 boxes of ARCs, and I feel like print ARCs, and I feel like that's an excellent use of my print ARCs. Also, I did a cover reveal tour through Susie Approved, and I feel like that was such a good use of time and money, because it lets the world know, oh, this book is out there, it's out in the world, people are seeing it. So those are things that I am doing again for this next one that's coming out in June, and we'll do for the third one. Things I would not do again. I think some of the things I would not do again I'm much more selective now about events, because if someone asks you to come somewhere and do something in person, the onus is really on you to build a crowd for that event often. And everyone has been so kind and so supportive, but I don't want to ask my friends and family and people who know me to drive 30 miles to a library somewhere on a Saturday afternoon when their kids have a soccer game to, listen to me talk about my book, which they've already bought and read. So I'm very selective about in-person events, because often the onus is on the author to build an audience for that. And again, the 3 hours, 4 hours it would take me to do that are 3 or 4 hours I could take to write. And I can produce a lot of words in 3 or 4 hours. And if I produce a lot of words, I have another book to sell. So to me, it's always a question of, is this at the expense of producing and writing the next book? And is this of higher value than writing the next book? And a lot of times it's not. And so that's sort of how I've started to weigh my time and weigh different marketing opportunities.
That's a great point in terms of prioritizing the writing. It's the second time you've mentioned that. I had 2 things here I wanted to mention that my never again list. One for me was NetGalley. So they are not my readers, and they kind of tanked my scores for 2 of my books that I'm still kind of recovering from. So just learning that they're not my readers. Because they get the books for free, they tend to be a little negative. They sometimes hoard the books and then don't read them and then don't do reviews. So the value just kind of wasn't there for me. The other piece was, often when you're starting on a debut and you're just looking for that validation from any old place, and I did some of those paid reviews with, Book Life and Kirkus and those types of things. And I'm a never Kirkus gal. Those are extremely expensive. They take a long time, and you could do so much more with that money from a marketing perspective than spending it on a review that may or may not be usable. Mine was not. So that was those are 2 never agains for me. What about you, Lainey?
I think I'd be there with you in the Kirkus thing, right? I also did it. I paid I don't know, I got the Good Friday special, and I think I paid $400+, maybe $450 or something for a Kirkus review, and it was good, right? The quotes were good, but I feel like Kirkus over portrays their influence. You go to their website and they're hundreds of thousands of people rely on Kirkus reviews. I'm oh, bullshit. So I feel if you can use it, great. But it's not just having a Kirkus review is suddenly going to make libraries pick up your book, right? Which is the way it's portrayed. Yeah. And so I think it's one of those things that's oversold by the company, right? In terms of what it's really going to do for you. And so I agree, right? For $450 or $500, you can go do a book tour like we were talking about, right? You can do an entry-level book tour and get influencers reviewing your book. And now you're getting, 10, 20 reviews on online tour. Now you're getting 10 or 20 reviews for that same amount of money. Or you can reach out yourself, right? I do feel I also, but this is 5 years ago, right? So I also did a book tour with Susie Approved, and I thought it was really productive. But then when my audiobook came out, I reached out myself to audiobook reviewers, and that worked really well. I was able to say, look, this book got good reviews already. People like it. You like audiobooks. I think this is your kind of book. And I got a very high yes rate and a very high rate of people reviewing it just from me reaching out to them directly on social media with a thoughtful pitch, right? Not just like a garbage email, right? And so I feel like some of those things I've realized you can do yourself as well, kind of what Gabi was saying, right? So yeah, those would be a couple of the things for me. Never agains. Gosh, I don't know if I did very many of them. I'm thinking about this never agains. Like, I did some podcasts that in retrospect, I'm like, it was good because I was building my brand. I don't know that they moved the needle or made any difference or really introduced me to the right audience. I think I'd be more thoughtful about who is the audience and is this particular podcast speaking to that audience versus being happy to go anywhere that it wants to invite me. I think I'd be really thoughtful about, okay, just because they invited me doesn't mean it's a good thing to do it, right? In terms of my energy to go do that podcast, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so what's up next? Well, I'm going to combine a couple of questions here. So if you look back before we go to our little break segment here, anything that surprised you that you would say like, oh, that was better than I expected or not how I thought it would go? And anything you changed on the timing? I'm kind of combining two questions and I'll let you answer them as you will. You know, as you think about the timing the next time around or the one that's coming up, did you approach things differently? And was there anything that surprised you first time around? I'll go to you first, Christine.
I'm trying to think. I guess it surprised me how effective First Reads was. And, you know, when there's a bestseller banner beside your book and, you know, was in the top 10 in the Kindle store. It was just not something I ever expected. So it was a wonderful surprise.
I have to point out that you were taking a book marketing class with someone who prodded you really hard to go and ask for First Reads.
Well, but asking does not guarantee that
it doesn't mean you get it.
So, but yeah, it was a wonderful surprise. It was a great surprise. And I'm sorry, what was the other question, Lainey?
Timing. Did you change anything in the timing this time around versus last time?
No, but I am learning that if I am lucky enough to have future book contracts, I will not schedule a contract that has a book due pretty much the same day as the previous book is coming out. Someone once said something to me that has sort of haunted me, which is that readers have short memories, and that there is, you know, a lot of utility in releasing a book a year and not letting there be a big gap between your last book and your next one. And I think that's very true. Like I you know, will read a book and I'll be like, oh, I read this great book. And someone will say, what's it called? And be like, I have no idea who wrote it. I can't remember, you know, I mean, I do this as an author. And so, you know, you put all this time and energy and effort into a book, you put it out there, it finds readers, people like it. And then you don't release another book for 2 years, 3 years, they're not going to remember. And so I feel very convicted that, again, the best thing I can do with my time is produce the next book, because if they like the last one, hopefully they'll like the next one. And the sooner I can get that out there, the more likely they are to remember, oh yeah, I like that author, and buy it and read it.
Gabi, we didn't ask you this yet, right? Did you change your timing or your thought process? Anything that surprised you?
So one of the things that I did change the timing quite considerably, because I realized that when I launched my debut novel, I did as much as I could before the launch. I did the launch day, the launch week, the launch month. I was all over everything. And then I sort of ground to a halt. And I went, oh my God, you just exhausted yourself and now you've run out of stuff to do. So, and I realized you have to keep reminding people, as Christine said, sort of, that you have a book. And so slowing it down and spreading it over a longer period was very helpful to me. And the other thing that surprised me was I entered the Indie Author Project contest. Now, this is for independently published books, that's to say self-published, hybrid publishers or small indie publishers. And it's run by libraries. And I entered my first book for that, and I won the award for Connecticut because it's divided up into states, and it paid me a substantial chunk of money, which I hadn't realized I was going to get. And I just went, there's more than one way to make money out of a book. It doesn't just have to be royalties, because people are chipping away at your royalties all the time. So that surprised me and made me fairly selective about entering contests, but interested in ones that might offer you exposure or some actual money.
One thing I did, it was between the second and third book, was I was just noticing that there was just a lot of books coming out in the fall, and my books were coming out kind of one a year on a fall release schedule. So what I did was, for the third book, I held it back until February. And I now was kind of more on a February release. It just felt like it was less crowded in terms of like the, books coming out that time of year. And then the advertising was less competitive. You weren't just getting lost in the shuffle a little bit. So that was one thing in terms of timing, Lainey, that I did with that. That I just wanted to toss in.
Like that. Paulette, you've got an event coming up. We'll move into our little sponsor segment here. Talk to us about this event you've got coming on March 1st.
Yeah, so this Sunday, March 1st, if you're listening to this in the future, sorry you missed it. I'm partnering with author Linda Ladner, and we're doing a live Zoom event on March 1st, 7 p.m. Eastern. If you go to my website, paulettestout.com, it's right on the ribbon on the homepage. And we're just having a conversation about romance with purpose. And there has been some really great conversations lately. I heard author Kennedy Ryan, who's a big romance author, was talking about, like, why do romance authors need to sit on the sidelines about the biggest issues of our day? And my view is we don't, and I don't in my books, and Lynn wasn't either. So it was a great timing for that kind of sentiment to be floating around, because there's lots of things going on in the world, and I think that a lot of people hunger for their books to have a little more substance in it. And I know that, we've got women's fiction guests here today, but I try to bring that element into the romance space. So we're having a conversation about that. I totally invite anyone who's interested to join us for the conversation.
Awesome.
Can I add a quick thing to that? And that is that I've got an event on March 1st also, and it's with two other authors. And we're going to be together in conversation at a library. They are Harper Ross, who is formerly Jamie Beck. And so Harper Ross is her debut novel. And the other one is my friend Linda Avalar, and it's her debut novel. So now I'm the experienced person, despite the fact that probably so many more books. But the point is, doing things with other authors, collaborating on things, I think is something that's very underrated in terms of book promotion.
You are a brilliant straight person, Gabi, because this is actually our next question about community. So let's talk about this, the role of community, and how has community played into your lunches? And I'll let you go first, Gabi. And I know that Christine just made a video about this. I just saw a reel you made about this point on community just yesterday, or I saw it yesterday. So Gabi, how has community been part of this whole debut and since? Like, what has it meant and what role has it played for you?
Well, I think the fact that because I've joined organizations, I've started writing groups myself and so on, and I've spoken in places, I've met a lot of other writers. So if nothing else, I've got ideas from other writers. And then people will go, oh, she's not bad. She can moderate a panel. She's done that before. I mean, I'm moderating a panel for the crime conference. Like that. Yeah, I know nothing about it. I'm a fan, but so,
Yeah.
But because I do that, I get to know other authors, much bigger sellers than I am, and they're willing to mention my name when they're appearing elsewhere and so on. So community is, in my view, being kind to other authors first, and then they will be kind to you, or some other authors will be kind to you. It's karma.
Like that, karma. Christine.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I feel like because my women's fiction usually has a dead body in it and some humor, I have friends in the thriller space, and because I started out writing YA romance novels, I have my romance buddies, and then I have my women's fiction writing buddies, and so I just feel so lucky that I have all these friends in all these different genres, and they all bring something different to the table. They all have different advice. They all have different expertise. And, again, it took me 10 years to get published, and I would have quit so many times if I did not have this fabulous group of people saying, you know what, Christine, it's okay. You're a good writer. Rejection's part of it. Don't quit. Keep going. I never ever would have seen a book of mine on the shelf if it were not for other writers. And so I truly believe that we are unique people. Not everybody has stories inside their head. And I think when you have stories inside your head, you have to find the other people with stories inside your head, or you're going to start to think you're weird. And so I just feel that we can't survive without other writers. I just feel so strongly that we are a community of people who really need other people who are like us. So I love other writers. They're my favorite people to be with.
So that's a great segue into our next question, which is about advice for other debut authors. If the debut author came over to you overwhelmed and trying to figure out, how to deal with the fire hose that is publishing, what would you tell them to focus on? I'll start with you, Gabi.
I thought you might ask this. So I would say, figure out who your reader is. Find a person to ask. We don't learn other things without asking. We find the person who's got the answer. And I think that's an absolutely crucial thing. And you can do that through organizations of writers. You can do it on Facebook groups. You can talk to Lainey and so on and so forth. I'm not trying to give her a plug, but she does know everything.
She deserves a plug. Every plug she gets, she deserves.
But here's the thing that I learned when I took Lainey's course as well. And what I learned was I don't have to do everything. That's the main piece of advice I would give to anybody in this. Do what you enjoy doing first. And if you've got time, do a bit more of something else, but have fun with it, for heaven's sake. It's your debut. You should enjoy it.
I 1,000%. Yeah, agree. We all have different skill sets, and it makes no sense to force yourself to do things that you don't enjoy because you're not going to be good at them. But if you enjoy something, you will be good at it. And so, I used to work in television. I enjoy public speaking. And so, I'm speaking at this workshop we're doing on Saturday. I try to focus on things that I enjoy. And I book club meetings. I love hanging out with other women at book club meetings. And so I spend a lot of time and energy focusing on book club meetings. I am terrible with technology, horrible, awful, no good, very bad. And so I have a virtual assistant who helps me format my newsletter and do the things that I would just be gnashing my teeth and pulling my hair out if I had to do myself. So figure out what you enjoy and what you're good at and focus on that. And to the degree that you are able to ignore or outsource the things that you are not good at, ignore or outsource the things that you are not good at. But we all have strengths. Just lean into them. Lean into your strengths, and it will be a much more pleasant process.
Lainey, how about you?
I love that. Gosh, they're repeating so much of the advice I gave them in class. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, I see debut authors try to do it all and just drive themselves absolutely crazy. And even worse in the traditional model is try to do it all on the marketing side and try to write the next book and get it out and deliver it at the same time as you're doing it all, right? Which just makes your head explode and makes you miserable. So I completely agree, because I also give that advice of don't do the stuff you hate. Don't do the stuff you hate. Work out who your target reader is. Like if you can work out who your target reader is early on, it'll help guide everything else. And it can be kind of that guiding beacon to help you decide what is worth your time, which event is worth going to, which isn't, which, panel is worth your time, which isn't. I think if you can have that reader in your mind, it makes it a lot easier and you don't end up just agreeing to everything. And I was definitely, like I said, a little bit guilty of this myself, where I'm like, oh, people want me to come to their thing. Of course I'll come, right? Nobody knows who I am. I'm a made up person. I'm a pen name. I'll go anywhere you want me to be. But I realized I didn't really need to do that. I overdid it on the I will be anywhere you want me kind of thing. And so this time around, I'm definitely going to be more thoughtful about bigger bang for my presence when I decide to be somewhere and to put energy into something. And the other thing I always tell people is give back early to other authors. So if you have an opportunity, well before your debut comes out, when you're not in the midst of launching your debut, to volunteer, to do, as Christine was saying, to use those skills. Like for me, I had tech skills. So I used those tech skills to help run the workshops for our Writers Association. And then I used them to help with my marketing skills to help run programs for that same association. So like people got to know me in that context where it wasn't a, please, can you help me? My debut's coming out in 3 months, right? And so I think the more you can get engaged and involved before, the better, because then when you already have that community, you already have these people, and you're not going kind of cap in hand begging someone to help you with your debut when you've never met them before, which just feels awkward, right? Writers still help each other even when they don't know each other, but it's so much easier if you've met before at a conference, as a volunteer, whatever it is, right? You start to build that community early. I think it really helps.
I have one big piece of advice for people, and expect to fail. Expect to make mistakes. We put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect and to do everything perfectly. And then when something happens, we feel like the world is falling. The sky is falling because, oh my God, I made a mistake. So for me, I've gotten great podcast fodder out of all the huge mistakes I've made with my debut. So expect to fail and have that expectation so that when it happens, you can kind of handle it with a little bit more grace than you would if you feel like you're putting so much import on being perfect.
I like that. And this is related to that question. Is there anything you were told you had to do that was essential that turned out not to be? Like, I'll give you an example. Like Christine, you brought up earlier, TikTok, right? I've heard so many authors be told, you must be on TikTok. And I'm like, well, I know an awful lot of very successful authors who are not on TikTok. So it is not a must, absolutely must do it, right? And so was there anything you were told that you must do this, that in retrospect, you're like, that was not essential. Like I could have got away with not doing that, or I just chose not to do that.
I think TikTok's a great example. I mean, not all readers are on TikTok. And if that's not your demographic and your readers aren't there, then it makes no sense for you to do it unless you really love it. But no, you don't actually have to be on TikTok.
Gabby, what about for you?
Some of us like it.
Well, some of us are good at it, not me, but you. Makes a difference. Yes, one of the things that I was sure I would need was the sell sheet. Right, I was convinced that I would have to have the sheet of paper that I would walk into a bookstore or a library and I would hand it over and they would read it and yada, yada, yada. And so I had it designed professionally and everything. The only person that uses it is me because I can't remember what the ISBN numbers are and they're on there. But what I found, in fact, was that when I walked into a bookstore, they didn't care about that. All they wanted was to see what the book was and was it something that they thought they'd like to sell. And the same in libraries. So, you don't need the sell sheet. You need the information on it, but you don't need it. And don't print 100 copies.
I have one that is annoying to me, and it's related to the publicist thing. And Paulette brought up earlier, do you need a publicist? First off, you may not need a publicist, right? Like there are reasons to get a publicist and there are reasons not to. And I feel like, especially with traditional authors, we kind of push them into this model of you must go spend your advance on a publicist. That's the only way to go. And very often it's not productive and not a good use of their money. And then within that, when they get a publicist, and the thing the publicist wants you to do is write a bunch of personal essays. And that is more writing work when you're also trying to work on your marketing plan and getting your book out the door and potentially delivering the next book. And now you're writing these, 1,000-word personal essays, hoping that they'll get pitched somewhere. And I just feel like that's a huge disservice to authors. Like it's like so easy for the publicist because they're basically going to the publication and offering them free content, and it's putting all the work on the author. And I just feel like that model is broken. Like I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm
Amen.
sorry to interrupt, but it's like that's 100% true. I spend so much time writing content for all of these things, and I think what people sometimes forget when it comes to PR is that you're paying for the effort, not the outcome. Like there are no guarantees with public relations. They have the relationships, they are pitching, but you're paying for the effort, and you can get zero out of it. And I have gotten pretty close to zero out of it, paying a lot of money for a publicist. So I just do my own stuff right now. We have, Lillian as a sponsor. She has great books about how to do all your PR yourself. So we're not bashing PR. We're just saying do it in a way that makes financial sense for you.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, we're getting to the end of our time here. What do we want to ask as a last question or two, Paulette?
I would love to know. Yeah, I mean, because we've got some different genre stuff going on. One piece, I'm going to do the genre piece because I think the other question we kind of covered a little bit. So is there anything specific to your genre, or the two genres in your case, Gabi, that you've learned or that worked well for you that you could recommend for others? We'll start with you, Gabi.
Well, when I started writing my first novel, I thought I was writing romance. And so I joined the Romance Writers Association, and I went to the conference, and they took a quick look at my book and said, this isn't romance, it's women's fiction. So whoops, because I didn't have the right beats, I had a completely different, and so on. So I started writing what I thought was women's fiction, and then I wanted this ghost in there. So I just added the ghost, and suddenly people were saying, oh, well, that's fantasy, or maybe that's paranormal. Well, paranormal to me was vampires and, stuff like that. And I couldn't make my book fit. I really couldn't make my book fit anywhere. And I think my memoir had been number one in something like feminist theory. It wasn't anything to do with feminist. So how people label your books has really got nothing to do with how you write them. And so when I was in Edinburgh at the Women's Fiction Conference last year, I went to a bookstore, saw the shelf saying feel-good fiction, had some romance, had some women's fiction, had some cozy mysteries. And I asked the owner, why have you got that shelf labeled that way? She said, because people keep coming in and saying, I want something to make me feel good. So I now just describe my book as feel-good fiction. And I think people get the general drift that it's not anything going to be too heavy, and they're going to enjoy it. They can put their feet up and have a cup of tea. And, so it's my own weird genre, and whoever's selling it can decide what they put it in. But when I describe it to people, that's how I describe it.
I like
think
what
you're
you're saying,
paranormal
Gabi.
women's fiction before your time.
Well, I think what you're saying is find the label that actually works to describe your work, and don't get so stuck on I must use someone else's categorization of the way the labels are, right? I think that's a really insightful thought. Christine, what about you?
I feel like, one of the big mistakes that I made, and the reason it took me 10 long years to get published, is because I was writing what I love to read, which is young adult novels, but I didn't have a young adult voice, and I was having no success at all. And a friend of mine read the Christmas letter I send out every year, and she said, why aren't you writing women's fiction? You have a women's fiction voice. And I'm like, I do? She's like, yeah. And so I, started writing women's fiction using the abundant material from my life as a mom who was driving a minivan. And I feel like pay attention to your voice, because your voice often determines what it is that you should be writing. And matching your voice to your genre, I feel like is a much easier path to success than trying to shoehorn a genre into a voice that doesn't match. And I had never really appreciated before how important that is. Everyone has a voice, and figuring out, my voice sounds like X, and X is writing Y, and Y is selling really well. Well, then maybe I should take a look at writing Y as well. And one of the things I love about women's fiction is it is such a big tent. You know, we have murders, we have ghosts, we have romance. I mean, we have it all, and yet it all manages to live together happily and coexist in this tent of women's fiction. And I feel like there's a lot of creative freedom under the rubric of women's fiction, and that's one of the things that I love about the genre.
Colette, you've been through a journey on genre, right? Like, wow, you've been through a
Yeah.
big circular journey on genre, right? What advice would you give based on that?
I would say, like, listen to your readers. Like, sometimes we have a preconception of who we are, and, you know, it may not actually be what's on the page. You know, you may think we're something, but what's actually on the page is something else. Like, I, thought I was writing women's fiction, but then it became pretty clear that my aesthetic and having open door intimacy and all those things was just not appealing to women's fiction readers who are, really closed door minded. So having to make that pivot, and it just sometimes takes a little time to find your voice. Like, I feel like I'm writing this book right now and it is flowing because I feel like I know who I am, I know my voice, I know what I'm writing. And yes, it's my sixth book, but the one, including the one in the drawer. But sometimes it just takes a little while to get there, so be patient with yourself. How about you, Lainey?
Ooh, genre. I've said this before that, like, I'm not very good at writing to market, right? Like, I believe in finding your readers and working out who's going to love your book. But gosh, that would be much easier if you started with doing what Christina's saying, which is working out where your voice fits and what's selling. And I feel like I write the books that I want to write, the books of my soul. And I'm not flexible on, I'm just going to write something because it'll sell better, because it'll be easier to sell in this category. And so don't be me. No. I feel like if it's going to take me 5 years to write a book, like, which it has both times, I want to write the book that I'm just going to feel really passionately. I wanted that work to exist in the world. And whether it sells 1 million copies or 3 copies, I feel like that's the best work. That's the best book with the best message that I was capable of putting into the world, even if I didn't go design it to the market. Which is really weird hearing that from a marketing person, right? Like, you would think I would be saying, like, write to market, but I'm not a very good example of writing to market myself. So I don't feel like I can tell people to go write to market. I would say write the books of your soul, and then find the people who are extremely excited about those books. And like Paulette was saying, you might find them after they're out, right? It might take a little bit. You might not be able to see exactly who's going to love your books to death before the book is out in the world and has a chance to be read by people. And so having that learning mentality after it comes out, to say, don't just come in it with a closed mind that says, I believe this book is this audience and that's how it's going to work. If you find that it's falling really well with a different audience, maybe that was your core audience and it's something to learn there. So I guess that's what I would say, is be a little flexible if you're going to be like me and don't write your books to market.
Cool.
Well,
so I guess it's time we wrap up.
Yeah. So most important question, how can our readers connect with you and your books? What is the best way to connect with you, to find out about your work, to follow you? Christine, you said you've got a newsletter, a Substack. Like, is that where people should really connect with you? Is that the best spot?
Yeah, Substack is great. It's called Notes on Love and Laundry, and it's Christine Gunderson. And Behind White Picket Fences is coming out on June 9th. So, but yeah, Substack is a great way to connect with me.
Awesome. Gabi, what about you?
I just want to say that Christine's book is also on NetGalley. And now...
Only give good reviews, y'all. Don't be like giving bad reviews.
No, because I have it.
Lord.
Yes. So because I have an unusual name, if you Google my name, you'll just find everything about me. I'm really lucky that way. So Gabi Coatsworth will find me.
Awesome. And I loved all of your books. Like, they're all so fun. So
thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Yes,
yeah.
Go ahead.
How do people find and connect with you, Paulette? You've got more books coming out all the time. How should they follow you?
Just paulettestout.com, PAULETTESTOUT. Just look there. Everything is there. You can buy direct from me on my website for less than you can anywhere else. So check that out. My events are all there with the dates and times and locations and cities. And check us out on Sunday, March 1st.
Yay.
Me and Lynn Gladner.
Awesome.
Yay.
Yay. Thank you so much for joining
Thank
us,
you,
Gabi
everybody.
and Christine. This was a fun conversation.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
See you next time, folks.